On aura deux conférences, donc la première par M. Daniel Muzyka, qui est président et chef de la direction du Conference Board du Canada. D'ailleurs, on a une belle entente et je vous remercie de l'entente qu'on a conclue avec le Conference Board pour l'École des dirigeants. C'est un grand plaisir pour nous. Une conférence sous le thème CEO Challenge 2015, Creating Opportunity Out of Adversity, Building Innovative, People-Driven Organizations. Monsieur Muzyka fera sa présentation en anglais, mais vous pourrez présenter en français parce qu'on a eu l'occasion d'échanger. Vous êtes très à l'aise en français, Monsieur Muzyka. On aura tout de suite après une conférence avec Alain Gosselin, qui est bien connu ici à l'École naturellement, que j'aurai l'occasion de vous présenter dans quelques minutes, après la première conférence, et qui va nous parler, donc, développer la prochaine génération de leaders. Donc, tout de suite, vous me permettrez de faire la présentation de cette première conférence, donc 20 minutes environ, ensuite période de questions. Daniel Muzyka, président et chef de la direction du Conference Board du Canada. Il est président et chef de la direction. Il est professeur en entrepreneuriat RBC Groupe financier à la Sauder School of Business de l'Université de Colombie-Britannique. Il avait auparavant été doyen de ce même établissement. M. Muzyka a enseigné et occupé des postes administratifs dans plusieurs universités et établissements, dont le Harvard Business School et l'INSEAD. M. Muzyka possède une vaste expérience des milieux universitaires, des finances, des affaires. Il a siégé à plusieurs conseils d'administration, tellement que je ne vous les nomme pas tous. Il est titulaire d'un doctorat en administration des affaires de Harvard University, d'une maîtrise en administration des affaires avec concentration en planification stratégique de l'Université de Pennsylvanie. Et il est, et ça m'a impressionné, M. Muzyka, détenteur d'un baccalauréat ESAR avec spécialisation en physique et astronomie du Williams College. Extrêmement intéressant. Il a aussi été fait chevalier de l'Ordre national du mérite de la République française. Alors, M. Muzyka, c'est un plaisir de vous accueillir.
So, good evening, everyone. It'll be much better for your ears if I speak in English. And I speak in English because I respect the French language. So I'd like to start with that. But it is my great pleasure to present the findings from the 2015 CEO Challenge. The CEO Challenge is something that was started by the Conference Board and is done worldwide. It's in its 15th year. It was done in September and October of 2014. And we look for the key challenges that CEOs see going forward and how they're addressing those challenges. We don't want to know just what are the challenges, but what are they going to do about it? Really an important key. We had 940 plus responses globally. The responses were weighted by GDP and some other things. I know there are professors in here. I will give you the full details about the sample later if you'd like. But I won't do it to the rest. I will say that about 15% of the respondents were respondents from companies that sold over 5 billion. 54% were less than 100 million. But it's still a large company sample. 28% were in manufacturing, 59% in services, and the rest a smattering of different sorts of companies. But the questions we asked were also about what are their intentions in terms of raising profitability. There were really 10 big picture trends that I'd like to spend a few minutes on because they're really the news here. CEOs are seeing the global growth challenge today. They're feeling it. We've dropped from a 3% growth world in the largest economies to a 2% growth world. In effect, we've shifted gears down. By the way, when I do that, those of you with gray hair will appreciate that I've just demonstrated how we shifted gears down. All right? If you're a current and a very, very, very current person, you know it's paddles. So you can tell age by how people shift. But in fact, what's really interesting is that CEOs really are taking the offense against this. There's been a period when people were trying to control everything, and they realized there are things we can influence and there are things we can't post-2008. We're starting to see that realization. People are also trying to build much stronger relationships with their customers. Customer is king. If we're going to grow, we have to capture market share. The people who are closest to the customers are going to capture that share. And this is something that's really coming home to roost. The other, and this thrills me to no end, is that people are finally realizing that one needs to manage innovation. It isn't just something that happens if we're all creative. You manage the process. And there's a lot more attention to managing innovation for better results. Also, if you're going to manage innovation, what matters in that process is managing the human capital. That it's people who deliver. And I think that's the other thing that's come through. There is a funny aspect amongst the 10, which is around big data. Every group of CEOs I'm with talks about big data, data mining. It's fascinating. Lots of conversations with a glass of wine around big data and data mining. Recently, we started in the conference board doing a lot more data mining ourselves, and we've actually gained some revenue from this. And anytime I say, well, it's working for us, we've actually gained some revenue, everyone goes, how? So while people are going through big data, looking at big data, no one's quite sure how to capitalize on this. So there's a sense that big data is important, metadata is important, unfortunately to some people south of the border more than others. But in fact, we've got to figure out how to mine this. The other thing I think we all found fascinating in the results was a sort of lack of sense of cross-cultural competencies being important. We do live in a little more of a global village. And I think there are common behavior patterns developing. This need for sensitivity across cultures actually may be lessening a bit. The sensitivity to it's lessening a bit because there are common protocols. And I think we're starting to see the emergence of that. Sustainability is coming to the top of the list. This is good news. CEOs seeking to really rebuild trust is another subtle trend in here. One of the things that we were struck by when we looked at the data, though, is CEOs. Well, Pogo said it best. We found the enemy. It is us. The biggest challengers for CEOs are themselves. Right? Very interesting. They have high expectations for themselves. And it's a tough world to have high expectations in. So it's rather interesting. Now, I am going to give you a sea of data. For those of you who are a quick study, this is good news because there will be a test later. But if you look at it, what were the top challenges this year? And here you see the comparative list from the last few years. Human capital worldwide. The fact that we really got to look at the teams we've built and that those teams are what are going to drive our success is top of mind. Innovation management. If we're really going to be the top of the list, the fastest growth company, we have to be more innovative. They're feeling the heat, if you will, from the competition. Building great customer relationships. You can't win without that. Operational excellence ends up there, but interestingly, it's fourth. It isn't just about productivity and cost cutting and all that. We're going to win if we have the best team that's the most innovative, right? If you see the messages here. And sustainability gets close to the top of the list. You can see how these things have bounced around over time, but human capital for the last couple of years really has had the number one position in terms of overall challenges. Now let's compare that to the Canada results. That was the overall. Now let's look at Canada. What are we challenged by in Canada? Our biggest challenges? Productivity, right? We keep lagging in productivity. If you look at it, the CEOs see that, operational excellence. We have to get at the productivity problem. It's chronic. By the way, I keep 3 charts on my desk that if I am feeling good one day can make me feel bad. We have underinvested chronically against particularly the Americans in ICT, computers to help drive productivity, right? 2008, we had a strong dollar. We were one of the best performing of the G7 countries. Did we accelerate? No. We held back. What did we do after 2008? We feared that 2008 might repeat itself. So we grew the gap between the Americans and us in ICT investment. We became less invested in productivity improvement. Plant and equipment, 2008, top of the heap, didn't have to bail out our banks, right? We should have taken position. What did we do? We cut plant and equipment expenditures. What did the Americans do? Grew them post-2008, because we have to fix the problem. The gap's wider today. R&D expenses, same story. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to address the productivity problem. You have to invest to address it, all right? But operational excellence is top of the heap for us. Customer relationships, we understand that. Our other big gap, innovation, right? It appears here. Human capital, interestingly, CEOs here feel they've got a great team. We're just not getting the excellence in the innovation out of it, right? Interesting story, isn't it? But it does reflect our reality. Our productivity is not as high as it should be, and our innovation is not as big as it should be. One of the things, of course, that CEOs talk about was building trust. And you saw it in the general findings. I just want to reflect that it really is a critical problem. This is one of the studies on who's most respected, the Element Trust Barometer. The good news is, professors, raise your hands. Okay, turn the palm around and apply it. The public loves you. It's an honored position. I want you to know, because I'm also one, we can only go down. All right, very, very critical. Unfortunately, CEOs are kind of at the bottom of the list. There is a trust issue, and we've got to restore that trust as we go forward. Now, I want to spend a little time on this, and this is an eye test. I apologize. By the way, I got to building this shorter presentation by taking the standard presentation, reducing it in half, and then taking the top 20% of that. It's that thick, right? But if you look at it, what's happened here is if we look at the top 5 strategies for dealing with the number one issue, human capital, what we find is that companies want to improve performance through better accountability processes, providing more training. And this is global now. These are the global results. Enhancing effectiveness of the senior management team, right? So trying to boost accountability, put the right measurement systems in place, getting employee training, raising employee engagement, number 4. Number 5, improving leadership development programs. And very good news for HEC and the conference board. Leadership's important, training's important, but we're saying, look, we've got to have accountability in here. So people are looking to more accountability strategies. Overall, in innovation, create a culture of innovation. Very important. You're not going to get it unless people see it as a key cultural norm. Engage in strategic alliances. Innovation isn't just yours. You have to partner with it. You have to borrow. You have to use your whole supply chain to innovate. And I think companies today recognize that. Innovation's a group activity. Find, engage, and incentivize key talent. You got to do that. Apply new technologies and adopt user-centric approaches. All good. Customer relationships, engaging them, enhancing quality of products and services, absolutely important. If you don't have the quality, no matter what your marketing says, customers are cynical today. And I think CEOs recognize that. Very different world than it was 10 years ago. Certainly, it's a very different world than the Mad Men era, right? You can't just put it out there that you're something and not deliver the quality, right? I think we've had a recent example of that in terms of side brands. Rouge as an airline, right? I think Air Canada found that it didn't explain Rouge in the offering. People were evaluating quality standards against Air Canada's usual product. So increasing speed to market and tailoring market. Let me shift, because we're going to end up with significantly less time. By the way, this is also available on the Conference Board website. I'd like to go to the top 5 strategies for Canadian enterprise. And, it's very interesting. Operational excellence. Seek better alignment between strategy, objectives, and organizational capabilities. Again, what company executives here are seeing is we haven't got the mix straight. We don't have our operating strategies and our overall market strategies aligned properly. It's a fascinating insight when you think about it. We're not aligning things, and that's a big problem. Continuous improvement. Again, we're not aggressive enough with the productivity improvement. Breaking down internal silos. I find this fascinating. It never appeared as a strategy in general and on average. In Canada, for some reason in our enterprises, we tend to allow silos to build up. Right? I think we're all dealing with it. How many of you CEOs feel that you're dealing with something like that? You can tell Dr. Dan, it's all right. The hands are going up like this. Yeah, there are quite a few people's hands went up on that. It's fascinating that it shows up. Invest in employee training and development and improve organizational agility and flexibility. That's where we see a big difference between the overall average on operational excellence. Overall, people are looking to build more agile organizations. We're just trying to drive continuous improvement. Agility ends up higher on the overall list. That's quite a fascinating sort of development. The other is develop a more outward looking customer-centric culture. Our companies, again a signal, our companies are inward looking. We haven't got people looking outside. And one person I know who's been very effective that says, remind everybody every morning that the enemy's outside. Our friends are outside. Right? Don't concentrate all of the organization's focus on internal games. But I think that's telling. Enhancing quality of products, engaging personally with key customers, all very, very important. What I found interesting too was innovation. Finding, engaging, and incentivizing key talent. So our CEOs are saying, look, our people don't feel the incentives to innovate. Wonder whose failure that is, right? But the CEOs are seeing that very much so. Engage in strategic alliances. Notice that number 4 is creating a culture of innovation. While for the rest of the world, that was number 1. Right? Here we view it as an incentives problem, not a culture problem. I find that very, very interesting. It's a very different way to frame the problem. I would argue maybe we need to do a little work on that, and I've noted that as a key area for further research. I'm going to flip now to expectations. And what we see in expectations, in a world, my friends, that's dropping from a 3% real growth world to a 2% growth world, is that CEOs are driving themselves for higher expectations on average. If we look at it, 15% are saying we're going to increase substantially. Right? In a world that's growing at 2%, which is great. Increase moderately, 60%. Right? You're counting all this up, aren't you? Basically, we've got 75%. They're saying we're going to outgrow the marketplace. Right? It's like one country that had realized it had a statistical problem when, in fact, the country was supposed to be growing at 7% a year, and they found that every province in the country was growing above 7. Does anybody see the statistical problem here? professors here, you fail this one, we're in real trouble. All right. Only about 20% say, well, we're going to kind of remain somewhere, and decreasing about 4%. Only 4% are going to decrease. Everybody is geared for growth. Everybody's going to be above average. I find that fascinating. Now, what are the top 10 strategies for increasing and maintaining profitability? Okay, focus on revenue growth. For Canadians, that's second. Launch new products and services, leverage innovation. Interestingly, if you look at it, on this list, what's fascinating is 9 or 10. We're not going to increase profitability by squeezing more out. The lemon has been squeezed. We need a new lemon, right? We've already got all the juice out of this one. That's a very good realization. My friends, we've been in re-engineering, process engineering, reduction of cost since the early 1990s when the first books came out on re-engineering, right? There's just so much you can squeeze out of it. You have to create new lemons. What does this mean for implications for the C-suite? Well, for the chief executive officer, what we're seeing is that they want to build more agile organizations. We need to be more adaptive. We're going to have to adapt to new opportunities, create and adapt to them. So we need more agility and we need more innovation. For chief strategy officers, the notion of sustainability needs to be embedded throughout the organization. We need to keep renewing ourselves. The innovation is important. You don't innovate, you eventually die. A fact of nature. CFOs, well, here's the tricky part. It's not about the things you can measure, it's about the things you can't measure very well. And this is really hard. For decades, teaching entrepreneurship and innovation as a professor, I'd always say, you know, it's very interesting. There's no accounting system in the world that measures lost opportunity. It only measures what you captured, right? Well, it's a new world for CFOs. How do you measure your human talent, right? The CFO may actually have to walk over to the chief human resources person because it's about these really messy, intangible biological units. It's quite fascinating. Hard to measure, you know, very hard to measure. For the HR officers, the CEOs are focused on employee engagement. We're all launching employee engagement surveys. I did it myself this year. I'm still standing, so it wasn't bad, just if you were curious. CEOs believe that, you know, culture has overtaken technology, which it really has. If you're going to be innovative, culture is critical. You see with chief talent and learning officers, general counsels don't get to sleep anymore. These are the most fearful people on the planet because what they're seeing is invasions of databases, all of these things. It's an ugly world out there. But ladies and gentlemen, hopefully this gives you a sort of quick overview of a huge amount of data. What we want is to build, as CEOs, more agile organizations. We want to control the things and deliver on the things we can control on. We've finally come to terms with the fact that we can't control the universe. It's all about the human factor. And it's about innovating so we have a future in a more competitive world. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions, and I thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Muzyka. Donc, on a de la place pour 2 ou 3 questions en français ou en anglais. Je vous demanderai d'aller au micro et de vous nommer, s'il vous plaît. Il faut quelqu'un pour casser la glace. C'est toujours un peu dur.
I do have some ugly teaching habits left over. If I don't get a question, I'll assign a volunteer, so get ready.
Maybe I'll have the first question. So,
Okay.
a tricky question, just
He
during the
wants to
time you're
save
preparing
you.
yourself. I was just curious. Quand vous avez parlé des résultats, vous avez parlé des résultats globaux, ensuite
Oui.
des résultats canadiens. Le Canada est un immense pays.
Oui.
Est-ce qu'il y a des différences dans les différentes régions du Canada, dans la perception des grands enjeux?
There is a bit of regional difference, partly because the nature of the industries are different.
Yeah,
But, you know, I've got to say, they're not huge because we're all dealing with Canadian culture.
Yeah.
We're all dealing with a similar banking system, control systems, regulatory frameworks. So it tends to drive the issues to be much more similar than different.
Yeah.
You know, one of the big challenges and where it shows up is our neoconservatism. We live in a cold country, and we always want to go put acorns away for the winter. And once we've filled the acorn pile, well, you know, it could be colder, so we need some more acorns. All right? So we're very, very conservative here. We have now got, and we've been tracking statistics on this at the conference board, our companies have now got larger proportional cash piles in them than the Americans. And the Americans are complaining about the fact that they need to deploy the cash. We need to deploy even more. We built an acorn pile on top of the acorn pile. That's a cultural dimension in Canada. So these sorts of cultural things really come through. So now we need a question out here. If you think you're in the back row and safe, you're not.
Alors,
Vous avez beaucoup.
je vous demanderai de vous identifier peut-être pour...
Gilles Duruflet, je travaille dans le domaine du capital de risque. Vous avez beaucoup identifié le problème de l'innovation et de la productivité.
Oui.
Dans d'autres pays, notamment aux États-Unis, quand on parle d'innovation, on parle beaucoup de open innovation et de la nécessité de collaboration entre les grandes entreprises, les petites entreprises, le capital de risque, tout un écosystème avec des parties prenantes différentes. Le Canada n'est pas très performant dans ce sens-là. Quand on regarde les écosystèmes d'innovation, les grandes entreprises canadiennes sont relativement absentes et se sont même retirées ces dernières années. Oui. Je suis surpris que cette question-là ne soit pas sortie, ce modèle d'open innovation qui paraît si difficile à implanter au Canada. Je suis curieux que ce ne soit pas sorti dans vos matrices.
I do think we have a challenge with open innovation. We have a challenge with innovation, frankly. We're underperforming. We know that on all the dimensions. By the way, there are some dimensions in innovation where we do exceptionally well. Canada, on a proportional basis, outperforms in terms of discovery. We're actually heavier hitting in the world than most countries in the world in terms of what our research scientists generate. We just don't capitalize on as much of it as we should. All right, so on the discovery end, we're doing really well. One of the things you did see in there was the whole open innovation. The notion of partnership, all right? It's very clear in there, right? In the rest of the world, partnership plays a bigger role. In Canada, we're not doing it quite as well. I will suggest that I think it's starting to change. I've been pessimistic because I came back to Canada from Europe after a decade and found that we just simply weren't doing what even, you know, some of the more conservative countries in Europe were doing in terms of open innovation. But I do see it slowly changing. We're starting to have better dialogue between industry, government, the research councils, and the like. We're seeing more partnership. I'm also chair of NSERC Council, which distributes over about $1 billion a year, plus or minus every year, to support research, innovation in universities, but also in partnerships. And we've got thousands more companies involved in that. So there are some signs that things are improving, but you know, you're absolutely right. We need to be stronger in partnership. We need to have more open and figure out how we're going to capture value. One of the tricks here is we're nervous about partnering because we don't know how to capture the value. I guess the final part of that is risk capital, venture capital. We have to get better at this. The irony for Canada, and there is an irony in here, about half of the capital to develop mines globally, right, in countries like the Congo, Mongolia, is assembled in Canada. We don't find starting a mine in the Republic of the Congo risky. But come to a high-tech venture, right? We have difficulty. It's a bit of a contradiction in our thinking. So it's fascinating. So we need to develop a much stronger sense of capital risque. Enfin, right?
Monsieur Muzyka, il y a une dernière question. Oui, on peut y aller. Merci.
Oui, bonjour. Annie Corriveau, Hydro-Québec. Vous avez mentionné qu'un des enjeux pour les PDG, c'était l'enjeu de la confiance. Est-ce que vous auriez quelques mots à nous dire sur comment ils pensent traiter cet enjeu-là? Parce qu'on a vu qu'il y avait une diminution puis il se trouvait très bas dans la capacité à générer de la confiance.
Okay, this one, I apologize. I'll need to...
I can't.
Do
you want to translate yourself or I do it?
No, it's just the
I would
sound.
appreciate if you do it.
How do you manage the confidence problem that we saw on the survey?
The confidence problem, our confidence has to improve. And it goes to the capital risk problem because that requires more confidence too. I think that's at the root of our issue with capital risk. Right? I think we've got to start to support each other. We have two problems that Europe has. Europe did a study of why they don't have more entrepreneurs and more entrepreneurship. One reason they said that they had a problem, and the studies came back, were issues with regard to failure and success. Ask yourself, what happens to somebody in Canada if they fail in a business? How do we react? Now here, you need to tell Dr. Dan, honestly, what happens in the press? You're shunned. In the United States, in Silicon Valley, they're going to go take you out for drinks, and the next day, you've found another job, if not that afternoon, right? I even know venture capitalists in Silicon Valley who won't invest in companies or in entrepreneurs who haven't failed, right? It's an experience. So we've got to come to terms with the fact that failure is normal. It's not the person's fault. And we need to give other chances. We similarly don't have as big a problem with success as people in some countries in Europe, but we do have a problem with it. Right? They did a study in France, and they asked people, if you've been successful, what was the reason for this? And it was quite fascinating. I haven't been able to find it again. It somehow didn't end up on the internet. But it was done in the 1990s, and the largest response was to be successful, you had to cheat on your taxes. So there were problems with success, right? Envy, a sense of you're antisocial if you're successful. How do we treat our success stories? How do we treat our successful entrepreneurs? We have to, I would say, if we want to develop confidence, we have to get more confident with the fact that success is a good thing and that failure happens. And we need to differentiate failures due to a moral failure, if you will, versus an honest failure. Person tried, they did the right things, but it didn't work, right? I think confidence is going to develop if we start to deal with both of those issues. Right? Anyway, thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Muzyka.
Yeah,